Or is that my job?
Nope, we got it.
Got it? All right, perfect. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of Know the Difference, Economics, Finance, and Management. Please keep your mics muted until the end where you can ask questions. My name is Devro, and I will be your Masters of Ceremony and Discussion moderator tonight. I would like to thank my colleagues at the Undergraduate Economics Council, or UEC, for putting together this incredible panel and bringing us all here today. We'll be devoting roughly the next 50 minutes to the panel discussion and another 30 minutes for Q&A from the audience. For all those who don't know, the UEC is the official economic student society at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and we work directly with the Department of Economics to enhance the student experience on campus by planning events like this and our annual economics case competition. So if you did not attend our previous event, this panel aims to inform you all on the difference between economics, finance, and management from a student, professor, and professional perspective. This panel will be discussing the professional perspective. So please stay for the whole event. And at the end, two people will get a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card. We will let you know early tomorrow morning. So this is just a disclaimer. The views and opinions shared tonight by our panelists do not necessarily reflect the values or principles of the Undergraduate Economics Council, the Department of Economics at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, or the University of Toronto. So now that all of the technical information is done, let us have the panelists introduce themselves. So Sebastian, why don't you go first?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure speaking to all of you today. So I'm Sebastian. I'm a senior economist at the Bank of Canada. I'm currently assigned to the International Economic Analysis Department. I particularly work on global issues. So in my role, I work a lot with international organizations and forums like the G20 and the G7 on issues where Canada is collaborating with other peer nations on our common goals and policy agenda, and also sharing experiences. So right now it's a very interesting time with all of the challenges ahead, and especially as we're moving out of the immediate urgency and more into the recovery phase. Coordinated international policy is something that's in Canada's interest, and my team is strongly collaborating with other countries. My background is in economics. I specialized in international economics and finance in grad school. And I actually started my career at the International Monetary Fund as an analyst, following emerging market issues. At the time, there were many exogenous shocks coming from oil price fluctuations that were forcing countries, small countries that were resource dependent, to really rethink their business models and diversify. So that was a great experience, and ever since I've been, involved in those sort of analytical projects where we really need to think about how the economy is evolving and what policymakers need to do to remain relevant and to make sure that policies are really adequate to the economy and not the other way around. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sebastian. Don, why don't you go next?
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Romano. I'm the president and CEO of Hyundai Canada. I was previously, before this, the president of a smaller auto company who will remain nameless, because really, in my life, there's only Hyundai. My undergrad was in business. I'm originally from California, but I am a dual citizen, and this is my home in Canada, and I consider myself Canadian after I raised 4 children in Canada. My graduate work was also done in California, MBA, and I've been in Canada for 15 years, but I've been in this industry for 37 years. I was originally a pilot for a cargo airline out of California. It went bankrupt. I still had a year left of university. I had to pay for it myself, so I needed a job, and I was driving home from the airport, Los Angeles International Airport, and Nissan happened to have a headquarters on the highway. I needed a job. It was close to my university, so I went in and I applied. So they didn't need a pilot, and I said, well, I need a job. And they laughed and gave me a job. And, that was back in the early 80s, before a lot of you were born. So that's how my career started in automotive. I am not an automotive aficionado. I am not a car enthusiast by any means. I love planes. I grew up surfing, and now I spend my time up in Halliburton, water skiing and wakeboarding. And up in the Blue Mountain area, I spend my time racing on snowboards. So that is all you need to know about me. Thanks.
Oh, well, welcome to the better half of North America, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah, so our last panelist is Maria. Please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Maria Theofilaktidis, but please just go with Maria. I am a proud Greek, Cypriot, South African Canadian. I always tell people that just to reflect my cultural diverse background. I'm actually a chartered accountant by background, or chartered professional accountant at this stage, if you like. My current role, I work as the EVP of Finance at the Bank of Nova Scotia, Scotiabank. And I've been at the bank now for 19 years today, actually, believe it or not. I'm currently running a finance team. I actually just took this role in September, and that's kind of a very traditional finance role. I run the Chief Accountant's Office, which is accounting policy, financial reporting, financial accounting. I run the accounting operations group, accounts payables, global procurement, which would be equivalent to supply chain, kind of in a non-bank, and global taxation. And of course, and Sebastian would know about this, is given that we're a bank, I also run our capital management processes. So everything that the regulators agree on at the G20 usually comes back to capital at a bank, and my job is to deal with that. So that's my current role. I have 3 kids myself, some of them going through different stages at school still, actually, trying to navigate COVID online. I think the one who's at university is finding it much easier than the ones in high school. I think you think this might not be the best university experience. Imagine your high school experience being online. So it's been interesting, yeah.
All right, thank you all for that. Now let us get to the very first question of the night. So the way that the responses will be structured, if each panelist could just share their response, then after that, if you guys want to, we can have a little discussion about your responses to kind of provide a better compare and contrast for students. So most of the students in attendance tonight are first and second years looking to begin their career. How did you begin your career? And can you tell us about your journey from university to where you are right now? Don, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think I gave you a little prelude to it. I wanted to be a pilot. I loved flying, and things change. And I guess the moral of that story is adaptability. What you think you may want to do may not be what you end up doing. I doubt Elon Musk, when he got started, thought he would go to Mars, or he'd create a automotive company that would be worth more than any other company in existence. And I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit that is necessary going forward. I mean, what you think you're going to do may not be what you end up doing, and that's okay. You shouldn't worry about it. And I think that's key, is not to worry. Get your education. When you're done, get more. You just can't overinvest in yourself. And the importance of that education, not just from an academic point of view, but just from a discipline point of view, is going to stay with you forever. And so I think it's important to get your undergrad. I think it's important to get your graduate. If you can even get your doctorate, don't ever stop learning. And from that, doors will open up. And I think that the important thing is to try to seize the opportunity when those doors open up. And if one doesn't open up, or one does open up and it wasn't right for you, then look for another. But eventually you're going to want to find that right career path that fits who you are and what you wanted to do in life. And trying to define that in yourself, I think, is probably the most important thing you'll ever go through, to really determine what's important to you. Is it making money? Is it being independent? Is it being part of a bigger group? Is it, you know, it's hard because you look at a lot of big companies and you think, wow, I'd like to do that. The chances are you probably wouldn't. You know, you need to understand what makes you happy and who you want to be in life. Then when the doors open up, you'll know which ones to go through. And for me, once, you know, I wanted to be a pilot, but when the automotive door opened up, I realized just how fun the business was and how big and interesting. And I also saw an opportunity for a change in the products that we make, being, unfortunately, one of the biggest GHG polluters in the world. Our industry is sort of the new, you know, tobacco industry. And there was an opportunity for change. And we could see, literally 15 years ago, I was driving an electric vehicle in California before there were electric vehicles. So, you know, we had always, you know, and I don't know if you remember, but General Motors was one of the first to come out with what they called the EV1 back in the 90s. So there's been this movement afoot, and you could see it in our industry that if we stuck with it, if we really worked at it, we could change the world. And that was important to me. And that's why I stayed in the automotive. And now Hyundai is the second largest electric vehicle producer and seller in the world, next to Tesla, but the gap is closing. And we're going to catch them, and we are going to be the biggest. And that makes me proud. And that was important to me when I started, and that's what kept me going. So define who you are, what you want, and then look for those opportunities in that area, and you'll have a fulfilling life.
Yeah, and small tidbit about Elon Musk. He's, I think, a native South African, but he got his undergrad at Queen's, dropped out, and started PayPal. So there's a little Canadian connection there. Sebastian, why don't you go next?
Well, just if I can add, he also worked at Scotiabank for a little bit. If you ever read his, if you ever read his biography.
I think he had a Hyundai too. So amazing guy.
Yeah, no, thank you, Deb. That's very inspiring, actually. I think like what you're saying about really thinking about what you want and the impact you want to make, because at the end of the day, you know, when you think about yourself and what you've made of your career, like sometimes it's about what you've been able to do with it, but really like the lives that you've touched, I think that's what really stays with you the most. And I think Don really captured that. Because that's really the fuel you need to go the extra mile and, you know, give those extra hours, because, you know, in the professional world, like sometimes, you know, you hit, you know, situations that are just very frustrating, and really stepping back and thinking about the big picture and what really motivates you is what's going to get you out of those like really tough spots. So yeah, my trajectory is a little bit more traditional. So I was an econ undergrad, and I actually started my undergrad studies at Vassar College in New York, really interested in policy. I was really interested in understanding, you know, why different countries were at different levels of development. And the more I started learning about, you know, comparative politics, international relations, the more I realized that I really needed to understand economics, because that was really the underlying force that was shaping a lot of the outcomes that we were studying, and that was putting a lot of pressure on countries to move a certain way or another. So I studied economics, and, you know, the thing about economics, and this is something that I really want to say, is I think it's one of those disciplines that works best when it's paired with something else. So if you want to be a good economist, it's very important for you to have cross-disciplinary knowledge, right? I see it at the bank all the time. You know, you have to give an outlook on the economy, but there's so many things that are non-economic that have economic consequences that you really need to get a hang on. But the same goes everywhere else. I think, you know, very good businessmen understand economics, and that makes them better at, you know, business. Very good diplomats understand economics, and that helps them, you know, because oftentimes economic principles are common, and that helps you find common ground for negotiations, and that helps. But even other things, like right now, some of the scientists dealing with the pandemic are also trying to understand, economic constraints that affect some of the ways they're deployed. So I think seeing that in economics really made me want to learn more about it. Now, after I graduated from undergrad, I really wanted to, do something in policy. So I thought, the best way to do it is to be paired with a coach. So I thought about all of the places where I could be and who could be my best coach. And I realized that if I was going to find a coach, it had to be in Washington, D.C. Because so many diplomats from around the world are just there in the international organizations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and also the regional development banks like the Inter-American Development Bank was there. So if I want to be the person that I want to be and have the impact that I want to have, I got to find a good coach. And I will only find a good coach if I move there. So that's what I did. And then it's actually funny how I started my career was I reached out to my second year friends, people that were at their senior year when I was a junior, who were actually working in Washington, D.C. And I asked them, hey, like, how do you feel? Like, has the experience been, what you were expecting? Could you connect me with some of, the connections that you've made in DC? Because, I want to be a research assistant, and I'm wondering if anyone needs something. And that's the third thing I want to say is that sometimes when you're starting your career, you need help, but people that have already a very successful career also need help, right? So I realized that there were these economists that were very ambitious that wanted to write these great papers and contribute to the literature in their respective fields, and they needed help. They needed people to actually do a lot of the literature review, a lot of the database cleaning, a lot of the, just compiling and imputing numbers even into Excel. So it's a win-win situation. You are there, you're young, you're willing to put in the hours, and then someone there is willing to coach you. So I actually had an interview in the Inter-American Development Bank with someone that a friend referred me to, and unfortunately that didn't go well. And later I found that this person that interviewed me was the former wife of perhaps the most important economist in the US at the time. And I think she had a very high bar. But what helped me was that I believed in myself. So even after they didn't give me that job, I emailed back and said, I really appreciated the opportunity to interview with you. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but I really want to be a research assistant to a good economist. And I'm wondering, you must know many economists. I'm wondering if any of them you think would be a good match for me. And this is after being rejected, right? And she said, actually, yeah, a friend of mine in another department here is looking for an RA. Why don't you message him? And then that's how I got my second interview. Not the first one that I wanted, but I ended up in a very good place. So I think those are the three things that helped me start my career in economics. And once you're in Washington, D.C., you start making connections with people that share the similar interests, and it's just very easy to grow your career there because it's teamwork. A lot of you are working on the same challenges, and that just helps.
Thank you for that, Sebastian. As a current research assistant looking at 120-year-old trade documents, I definitely understand what you're going through. Maria, your turn.
Well, I think Sebastian did not do a very traditional way of going at all. I think that's actually a great role model for persistence and tenacity, if you ask me. So I would say mine is a little bit more traditional. So as I said, I'm a chartered accountant, but I actually started doing a business degree, a business undergrad, finance, accounting, minor in economics at that time. But I would say that I always tell people I'm an accidental accountant because I started off doing law. But I am a child of immigrants. They were low income, uneducated immigrants. So I had to pay my own way through university. And when one of the big public accounting firms said, we will pay for your education if you just come and work with us afterwards, I was like, sure, but what do I need to do? I didn't even realize what a chartered accountant was at that time, but I became one at any rate. And you know what? It wasn't such a bad journey after all. It was a good growth opportunity. So I finished my undergrad, did a postgrad in accounting and finance, and moved into a traditional trainee role at KPMG in South Africa. And I'd say, that was a great training ground for anyone who's thinking about it, who doesn't like the idea of being an auditor. It is a great way to learn very quickly about things. And I never thought I would have a career beyond that in finance. I thought I'd get training and move on, but I actually managed to travel a little bit around the world because of KPMG. I moved temporarily to Vancouver for 18 months. I managed to work in different parts of the world because of KPMG. And so I stayed a little longer than I expected. And in fact, it was thanks to, I moved to Canada as part of that team. But I think what I did know is that I wanted to grow, and that was an area that seemed a little narrow in terms of opportunity. And I knew that based on what I learned in audit was a good foundation, because really it's not about accounting and it's not about auditing. It's about relationships, curiosity, learning very quickly, because you go from one client to another and you have no choice but to research, learn, get to know people and deal with very senior people, problem solving, etc. And so when I decided to join the Bank of Nova Scotia back 19 years ago, it was a personal development decision. It was, I'd like to join an organization where I have an opportunity to do more than finance. I wanted to just try different things. I was curious to grow. And, Don talked about, a constant growth in your life, like you should constantly be learning. Well, you can learn through formal education and you can learn through experiences. And I have to say that was my career trajectory at the bank. I certainly have probably not spent very long in any one role, but I've gone through the spectrum of both audit and finance roles, the traditional finance roles that you would have. But I also ran retail risk for the bank. I was responsible for their global retail portfolio. And as you know, Scotiabank is in some very interesting countries that have a whole different system and very different risk basis and lots of social and economic issues that impact them. And for me, that was a huge learning experience beyond kind of finance. It was a business and actually social and economic knowledge that I learned by traveling to those countries and understanding the impact that you have as a bank in those kind of economies where you're ensuring that people have access to financial services fundamentally as they develop as an economy. And then I moved on and I actually ran the Canadian branches for Scotiabank. So I went straight into a business role, running the 12,000 people across Canada in almost 1,000 branches, which was really not something an accountant would do, perhaps, or deemed to do. Like, how do you go from a finance and business degree and suddenly you're actually running the retail network and providing financial advice, etc., to clients? And then I moved back into back to Don's point around passion and interest. I'm always interested in change. I moved into what is now a very important part of all banks and all financial institutions, regulatory compliance and enterprise risk. And I ran the global compliance and enterprise risk function, which, when you're in 30 plus countries and you have significant regulatory scrutiny, it's a very interesting place to be. So you are dealing with regulators, you're dealing externally with clients, but you're also dealing internally with ensuring that the organization has the right controls in place. And then obviously I moved back to finance in this current role. So really, the journey is not where I started and certainly not where I expected to land, but maybe that's the lesson that you learn out of all of this, is that when you start, you really don't know where you're going to end. And I think that the reality is, when you work for over 40 years, I think it's a little hard to believe that you'll know exactly after 40 years where you'll land. because your passions and your interests should take you on the journey. All right, your career is a journey, not a destination, and that's probably a great way to. Certainly, that's kind of how I've looked at mine.
Wow, thank you for that response. So everyone, all the panelists talked about, like, some of the memorable points of their career while they were already in the workforce. One question I have for you all is, what is one of the most memorable things you learned while you were in school that ended up shaping your career? Don, why don't we start with you?
It would have to be my wife. I met her in university, and we've been together and crazy in love ever since. So it does help to have the right partner, and I happened to meet her in university, and we had similar educational aspirations, and then we just found out we had a lot of other things in common. But really, I would say beyond that, and finding the right partner in life, which you may or may not, it doesn't, that's up to each of you. I think one of the more moving experiences was grad school, because when I went to grad school at Pepperdine, everything shifted from individual education to group education. And suddenly you had to learn to work in a group environment with other people that had different viewpoints, different political views, different economic views. And, sometimes we still had to find a way to collaborate and to compromise in order to get projects done. And that is, if you do get into corporate business, not everybody is going to be Elon Musk and it's his way or the highway. When you're in a big corporation, you have to learn to collaborate and cooperate and get the best out of a team environment. And so that to me was the most important experience, because I've used that ever since. And as you move up in an organization, it becomes even more important, because now you're managing groups, and it's so easy to want to tell them what you think they should do, and it's so wrong. What you really have to learn to do is the people that are closest to the problems are going to come up with the best solutions if they know how to work together. If they don't work together, you don't build a culture that can work together, your organization is going to fail. When I came on board at Hyundai, we were one of the worst performing companies. We were losing a lot of money. I won't get into the numbers. We're now the most successful. Canada is the most successful. Hyundai Canada is the most successful company for Hyundai globally. And that turnaround took about 5 years. And it was not done by me. It was done by my directors and my managers and all the employees that were able to work together to come up with the solutions that we needed to be able to turn the ship around. And so if you can keep that in mind, again, if you have your own business, throw that out the window and just tell everybody what to do, and it can work. It worked great for Elon, but if you end up getting in a very traditional corporation, a big company, whether it's automotive, communications, banking, learning to collaborate is probably the most important thing you'll learn.
Sebastian, how about you?
So yeah, I've been thinking about the most important skills. Actually, it's funny, when I was in my first year of university, I asked this question to one of my professors, and I think he was a very young professor at the time that was a little bit frustrated. And I think he gave me the worst advice, which was like, when you're looking for your first job as an economist, no one cares about your ideas. All they care about are your spreadsheet skills. And that ended up not being right. What I learned, studying is that, I could, really have very meaningful interactions with a lot of my professors and classmates and really learn a lot from them, and that really shapes your worldview. And when you're having interviews later, to advance your professional career, how you come across in an interview is, really 95% of why someone is going to hire you, because it's about where you fit in the team and just being able to contribute in multiple ways, and being able to listen and being able to communicate that, because when you communicate what you've learned from others, that signals that you can listen, right? Because if you don't listen, chances are you didn't learn from others, right? So just I think just understanding that, you know, your prospects that really depend on multiple dimensions of who you are and not just on one skill. I think that that's the most important thing that I took away from college. And I think after my college experience, I've really tried to be well-rounded as much as possible, and not to focus too much on one thing, because I know even if that gives me a lot of, say, benefits in the short term, you know, the world is going to throw you a curveball, and you're going to need to be, you know, strong in other places, and you cannot just depend on that one skill that you have. You really need to have breadth.
Yeah, and when it comes to, like, you know, the piece of advice you said that turned out to be not so good, one piece of advice I have for all the panelists, specifically first and second years, listen to the responses of the panelists. And if you get asked any interview, question at any one of your interviews, and you use some variation of their answers, it'll get you far, because everything they're saying is very true when it comes to careers, right? So just want you all to pay attention to that. Everything's being recorded, so we'll be able to play it back. But sorry about that. Maria, on to you.
No, that, you know, it's very difficult to find something to add to what Don and Sebastian said, because that is very true. I think at the end of the day, what you will realize by the time you finish your schooling is that what you learn, your most important thing that you learn isn't the technical aspects of your program. It really isn't. It's helpful, obviously. It sets the benchmark. It sets your thinking, but it's all those other skills that it's helped you explore that makes you ready for the workforce, which is, like, you know, we talked about those already. Things like collaborating, like being by listening, the whole point of being exposed to diversity, because many people go through life and they've been in the same neighborhood with the same type of people who think like them, same economic background as them. And suddenly you go to university and it's like, wow, you've got people who, you know, talk about having an indoor swimming pool. And then you've got people who, like for me, who came from squatter camps. So like really appreciating the economic circumstances of our world. And the other point is the breadth. You know, it teaches you lots of things: discipline, persistence, analytical thinking, critical thinking, those type of things. But I think the other thing that you don't choose the easiest elective and hope you get through it and not really focus on it. Choose the elective that broadens your knowledge beyond your technical knowledge, right? Because it's that breadth that grows your mind. You know, have a growth mindset. Look for things that aren't about economics and finance. Look for things that will challenge your thinking, because that's what actually helps you grow and be a great leader, because you've chosen to look for things outside of what would be a technical perspective. And so, you know, for me, the university I went to in South Africa, this might sound very long ago for you, but I graduated just before Nelson Mandela was released. So I just before, kind of a year or so before apartheid was dismantled. And my university was the social justice university, right? So I learned a lot more out of my university for my as a skill of being a real human leader, of having empathy and surviving in the world that went way beyond my finance or business degree.
Wow, thank you. So the next question I have for you all is, what advice, so as we all know, the job market is not necessarily the best, right? Youth unemployment's at almost 30%. So what advice would you give to any first or second year student looking to start a career in your field, or is looking to gain exposure or future opportunities? What would you say to them? Sebastian, why don't we start with you?
Well, so in my field is mostly in understanding how you know, more on the technical side, how policies are basically come to be, right? And so you need to understand, what drives policy making, especially when it comes to economic policy, things like monetary policy. There are a lot of quantitative frameworks, and I think increasingly in other parts of policy, international relations, the type of background that is sought after is the profile of an economist, really, because an economist, because of the training, they do get the quantitative skills, but they also get to have a clear way of making an argument that's sound, and they're able to challenge their argument to make sure it's robust. And I think so right now it's a very exciting time to be involved in policy, because I think there is a lot of work. The whole game has changed, right? Like the rules of the game, the interactions between the different agents in the economic ecosystem are different. The sectors that are driving the economy are not the sectors that were driving the economy 40 years ago, when a lot of the economic models that are taught in school were developed. So right now, economics is reinventing itself, both in academia, but also in government and in the private sector. And there is a job for you if you're interested in this, right? You just need to really understand what specific area you're really interested in. It could be health, it could be trade, it could be consumer behavior, whatever it is. I think it's important to really know that within economics there are so many specializations, and find one that just really drives you, that if I tell you need to read 80 papers in 1 week, you would do it with pleasure. Like it's not something that would be painful. Like, for example, I know some colleagues that are so passionate about behavioral economics that they wake up and they can't wait to get their hands on another paper that just came out, right? So you really need to find what area specifically motivates you. And I think if you are very comfortable with the literature and you find a person that's doing exactly that, and you're able to communicate that you share that passion, you'll find a job. You'll find a place there.
Maria, you go next.
Sorry to unmute there. I think that if you're looking for a career in a finance area, it's a little bit less specialized. It's way broader. And my advice to people is not to get fixated about what's your first job, because your first job in a 40-year trajectory might only last a year. And then you move on and you look for other opportunities. So I think find an opportunity. It's something that you're interested in, obviously. I think Don said it right in the beginning. Find your passion and then things will flow. And Sebastian has said it so find an area you're interested in. Don't get so fixated around the technicalities of the job, because when you start working, honestly, the stuff that you learn might not even be related to just the job itself. It's just learning to deal with a corporate environment, the corporate politics, the working in a different team. So I think that in an environment today where it's hard to find jobs, unless you're really looking in a specialized field and you're open to it, honestly, you should just get a job, learn as much as you can, put your hand up for as many things that are outside of that job description, and then keep looking for your growth opportunities, because you're not going to go from your first job and stay for life in that place, right? And finance, just like economics, there's so many different things you could be doing. It doesn't have to end in any one place. And you won't know unless you try them. And the best time to try different things is early on in your career, where you have less responsibilities and restrictions that would prevent you from taking risks. So take those risks, try something. If you don't learn, you've learned something from, if you don't like it, you've learned something from that experience anyway, right? So, I've got a lot of people who come in and they couldn't find a job in finance, so they started in a branch and they were a teller, but then they went finally into the building and did other things. So my suggestion is, do not get fixated on the subject. that you're learning, but think about the ecosystem into which you will be going and how you can learn from those around you. And, you know, Sebastian's story about being persistent and following up and really looking for a job, that you've got to be persistent. Just because you don't get a job doesn't mean you're not good for that job. It's a relative game. You know, sometimes you get applicants first time, you know, especially for new people in the market, you can get hundreds of applications for one job. So, you know, it's not that you weren't good enough. It's just that there were 99 other people who as good as you. So someone had to get picked. So, you know, send your resumes out, be creative in how you approach people, but just try jobs. Don't opt out of a job without giving it a shot, because when you're new in a process, the only thing you can do is learn. Like there's very little that you can say that is not going to be a learning opportunity for you, but you're not stuck in that place. You can continue to learn and grow and try new things.
Don?
Listen to Maria. I don't know if I can add anything. I think she nailed it. You know, when I was your age, I wanted to be a pilot, and a commercial pilot. And the only way to become a commercial pilot was to get training. And I couldn't afford it. My parents couldn't afford it. They couldn't even afford the university. And so I saw a job posted on our university for part-time work at a company. It was called Line Bigers. And I thought, what is that? Line Biger sounds terrible. And then I thought for a minute, I wonder if they're talking about flying tigers, and it was a typo. So I called it, and they were looking for a part-time job, kind of an intern for $2 an hour, working ridiculous hours. And when I called, they told me that they had filled the job. Well, has the person started? And they said, well, actually, no. And I said, well, do you have a backup in case they don't start? And they said, well, that's a funny question, but no, we don't. I said, can I come and interview for the backup job? They go, well, we don't have a backup job. I go, I know, but you need a backup person. And I just wouldn't give up. And they said, all right, come on in. And I interviewed for the job. And the reason I needed that job was because I knew that the connections there would get me into they had the greatest commercial training program in the country. And I couldn't afford it, but maybe I could make connections and somehow get into it. And what Maria said about persistence and connections, you know, you have more connections than you think. And there are a lot more opportunities out there than you think. And there's a lot of internships out there. And yeah, you're going to do crummy work for little pay, and it's going to feel like a complete waste of time. But exactly as Maria said, it doesn't matter. That's not where you're going to end up. Because once you start meeting one person, you're going to meet another, and you're going to start making connections. It doesn't work on social media. LinkedIn's not going to get you there. What's going to get you there is just doing kind of like a reporter would do for a newspaper. You just got to go out and do the hard work on the streets and find out who's hiring, who's got internships. You got to grind your counselors. You got to find out where they are, and then you have to be persistent and take whatever you can get, because it doesn't matter what you do. As long as you get in, then you're going to be able to kind of work your way around and figure out, hey, you know, I got in through finance, but I really want to do is marketing, or I got into marketing, but what I really want to do is logistics. It doesn't matter. Or what I really want to do is own a franchise of my own. I mean, it could lead anywhere, but just go out there and learn to deal with the, and again, I love what Maria said about, you know, you do get thousands of applications. And if you don't get selected, I probably turned down some of the best people ever simply because there were other best people and I had to make a decision. But that didn't mean the other people weren't fantastic and weren't going to rise to the top and be, you know, whatever they wanted to be in life. It's just, you know, there's millions of companies out there. And so that I would never say there's no opportunities. There's countless opportunities. But if you're timid and you're not persistent and you don't push, and you just kind of wait for somebody to come and knock on your door and hire you, that just isn't going to happen. So put your game plan together, hit the streets, go out there and be persistent And I promise you, every one of you, especially I look at the diversity of this organization, and this is what companies are looking for. They're not looking for people that look like me anymore. Those days are gone. They want people that represent their customer base. And the customer base is what I see right in front of me here. And you know that customer better than I do. And I need people like you to help me determine, how to go about marketing, what kind of products to bring out, what are people what kind of obstacles will I encounter? So you're just in a great position. Don't let this COVID thing get you down. This is temporary. And when it goes away, things are going to explode. The market's going to take off, and they're going to be looking for the graduates. I think you're actually in a better position being in school right now. Just see if you can find something like an internship, or if not, just try to, even if it's a part-time job somewhere. And if not, just make connections. Charity work, great place to start. All of us, every executive is involved in charity. And, whether it's Habitat for Humanity, Black North, there's just, the list goes on and on. Join. Yeah, you're not going to get paid. It's going to take up your time, but you're going to meet a lot of great people, and that's going to lead to opportunities. So anyway, that would be my advice.
Yeah, for all of the first and second year students, don't forget that you guys are not alone. As a matter of fact, UEC, shameless plug, we have a mentorship program that'll connect first, second year students with third, fourth year students who got the internships you guys are looking for, who broke into the industry, who have done interviews, interacted with professors, gone through the university grind, right? We're here to help you. If you're interested, please reach out to us. We'll put you into the mentorship program, but just remember that you guys are not alone and that we're here to help. So in the interest of time, there's one more question on my end, then we're going to open it up to the floor. But in your humble opinion, what is the difference between economics, finance, and management from your own academic and your professional journey? Maria, why don't we start with you this time?
I think it just depends on what you're trying to get out of it, right? Technically you could just say finance, business, economics. Those are just kind of subject matters. It's actually kind of when you apply your experiences and do something out of it, that it becomes something, that you create the policies that have the social and other impact that you're looking for out of economics, right? These theories, and for all of us who've done economics at school, I take my hat off to any theorist, the economist, because that was always an interesting part of it. But, that you actually can take these things that are theories and apply it to real world situations and have a view on what the impact that it would have. And business is such a broad field. Like, what do you mean by business? Running your own business, being part of a business. Business is what keeps the economy going, right? And whether it is your own, whether you're running it, whether you're just an employee in a business, that's what it's about. It's the thing that keeps the fuel going for the economy. So you kind of connect back to the economy. And finance, well, finance is a broad thing. You could actually be part of financing something, which is providing the lending, the liquidity to people to do their businesses, or you could be part of a finance area, which without the finance people, you can't see what the profit is. You can't understand what your tax implications are. You don't understand, you won't have the financial results, because that's what finance people do, traditional. But finance is much broader. Your capital markets are finance. So honestly, in the context of the three items, the definition depends on the perspective, and there isn't one perspective from it, because they kind of all consolidate into a job or a role or an output, right?
Sebastian?
Yeah, exactly. Like with economics, you need to understand business. You need to understand finance, because I mean, economics is studying markets, right? Like there is a supply for something, there is a demand for something, there is an equilibrium, there is a price. You study financial markets, demand and supply of loanable funds. What's happening to aggregate savings. There are more people making money. There are more people looking to invest their money. What does that do to the interest rate? The interest rate can be thought of as a price. So I think it's really where you are in the whole upstream, downstream. So as an economist, you're trying to understand dynamics that happen in financial markets, in business. If you're more directly involved in finance, then you're actually maybe trying to come up with a valuation because your company is trying to complete a merger or an acquisition, and you want to make sure your bid is accurate and you can justify it, or different things. Private equity is different from public equity. Debt and equity is very different, and it depends. As an economist, you need to understand that. I don't think you can get away with only doing economics and forgetting about finance. But the degree to which you are exposed to it, I think that varies. And if what you are very passionate about are the kinds of topics of financial engineering and really understanding whether an asset is overpriced or underpriced, then maybe you should be more focused on finance. If you're really trying to understand the ecosystem and what are the structural pressures that are leading to certain trends, and how, like, whether you can basically disentangle the cyclical part from the secular part of like how the economy is moving up. If that's what you're interested in, maybe you should do economics more than finance and business. But if you really want to know is how can you make a product that's really good, that's going to sell, or how can you make a company profitable, or how can you make a company go from tiny to like the next Tesla, then maybe you should do business, right? So I think, but regardless of where you end up, good knowledge of the other two will really help you do well, right? So I think it's more about like the composition of like what you want to be specialized in, but I don't think you can just separate them like that.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, I don't know if I think Sebastian did a great job of covering the question. I don't know if I can add a lot. This is a little different answer than to the question that you're giving me, but I think it's important that while you're in school, what I would ask you to do is take every opportunity to speak in front of a class, every opportunity for public speaking. It doesn't matter what you do, whether it's economics, finance, marketing, whether you want to be a CEO or you want to be just middle management, or you want to go out and own a franchise. Your ability to communicate, as well as Maria and Sebastian, what you're just hearing from them, is a skill set. And it's hard because it's probably, for many of you, English is a second language. Don't worry about the accents. I mean, you can hear Sebastian. I mean, he is very articulate. He's going right. He knows exactly what to say. Same with Maria. You can still hear her accent. These issues don't matter. And if you let them matter, it's only mattering in your head. Your ability to communicate confidently is going to help you no matter what you do, whether it's just getting a loan for your first home, or whether it's applying for a job, or whether it's a promotion, or whether, it doesn't matter. You need to learn to be comfortable speaking. And again, I tell you, don't have fear that you're not good enough. Have confidence. And that is going to serve you well. And the way you get that is to keep doing it. And that means do it in every opportunity within your school. Look for things like at Toastmasters. Look at opportunities anywhere you can, whether it's church or charity events. Speak. And if you have a concern that your accent's too thick, or that you're not going to say the right words, you got to throw that out. You got to throw it out, because most people will tell you, at a funeral, they would rather be in the casket than speak in the eulogy. And that's going to give you the advantage right there, the fact that you're willing to stand up and speak. And especially since, again, I'm an immigrant. A lot of you are probably immigrants. If you're not, you probably have parents that are. Your socioeconomic situation, I came from nothing, a very poor family in a very marginalized community. These things you got to throw out. It doesn't matter. That's your history is not who you are. You've learned from it. But the thing that you want to do is just take from where you are right now, take advantage of it. And I think that's one of the beauties of Canada. we are the most diverse country in the world. And I've lived in 6 different countries. There's nothing like Canada. We are all from all different walks of life, from all over, and we all get along. We're not marching on Capitol Hill. We're not, we're not rioting in the streets, but we can improve, and we need to improve. But we do believe, I think, in the power of diversity. We believe in the power of collective work together for social work and social justice. So, I mean, you're in the right place. You're at a great university, one of the best in North America, and you've got great academic teachers and great opportunities. Take advantage of them. And my only advice would be, try to get as much exposure as you can to speaking in front of groups, because you're going to do it. And when you do it, people are going to look at you and they're going to judge you based on your confidence, not what comes out of your mouth necessarily, but your ability to do it confidently. And man, that's going to pay big dividends for you no matter what you do. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Don. And in the spirit of, improving everyone's skills in public speaking, let's open the floor now, and I want all 43 people who are not the panelists to go and ask a question. So if you guys are a little shy, it's okay. Feel free to type it in the chat and I will ask it to the panel.
I gotta ask, man. No shy. Come on, speak up. Let's hear you.
Yes, feel free to turn on your microphone and your camera and ask a question. The floor is open.
You know what we do in my company? We call on you if you don't ask a question. I know your names.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, you're undergraduate.
Yeah, I'm actually just a student. I'm hosting the call. So I'm actually super curious what it feels like to hold such senior positions in such huge companies.
The best CEOs and presidents of big companies are the ones that never wanted to be a CEO or president. So if you can't maintain your humility, you're never going to be a good leader, and no matter what you do. So, the feeling is one of you're always concerned. You're always concerned for your employees and their welfare and how they're. We have 250 employees at Hyundai Canada, but I have 10,000 that work in the dealerships, and we actually when you look at it, 10,000 employees and their welfare depends on the decisions that we may make every day. If that doesn't make you humble, then and if you let that go to your head, then you're one step in the wrong direction. So, I feel like it's just a big responsibility, and you got to care for the people that you're responsible for and that your decisions will impact. I mean, imagine, regardless of your political views, what Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, must go through every day, or the decisions that Premier Ford has to make in the closures. And I mean, these are hard decisions, but I can tell you I've met both of these individuals, and they both come from completely different political backgrounds, but I admire them both for one purpose, and that is their sincere caring for the people which they govern. And I think, that is the key to a great leader, and it really has nothing to do with the status or the pay or all that stuff. I mean, if that's what you're going for, it's probably going to be a pretty rewarding life for you. But if you really care about people and you're doing it for them, and it wasn't really something you're bucking for, but you were put in that position because of those reasons, then it's going to be a very rewarding feeling that you're going to have in being those leadership positions. And I hope that's the same for all of you.
Yeah, I would agree completely with Don. I think it is a privilege, and it certainly is a humbling experience. And I think most people look at this as, kind of from a servant leadership perspective. The job is actually to be there to help every single one of the employees that report to you, versus kind of just that you kind of be this figure at the top of it. And I always say to people, I quote Spider-Man. if you're a comic enthusiast, but with great power comes great responsibility. And that is what Don was talking about. When you're in a position of power, it's your responsibility to ensure things work out, but it's also your responsibility to bring about whatever change is needed to do the right thing for your people, for your company, for your society, for your community. And so, therein lies the rub. Like that's actually the impact that you have. It's not running the job, it's actually the ancillary things that come with the acts that you do and the impact that you can have.
If I can just add one comment you made that's so important, do the right thing. And that is absolutely not easy and so essential. So you're going to be faced with meeting deadlines, but meeting deadlines could mean that you miss quality control steps. And in our industry, that could put people at risk, lives at risk. But you have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders and to the board, and you're put in that position to move things forward. And these are decisions you make every day. And when you do get to a high level, they can affect lives. And just always doing the right thing is, you can live with yourself. You can go home, even if it costs you your job. There's going to be other jobs, but always stand up for the right thing. And thank Maria. That's a great point.
Yep. And any other panelists have anything to add, feel free to do so now. If not, then...
No, come on, Camila. Okay, Camila Munoz. I see you there. Unmute and ask a, there you go.
Hello. Okay, so maybe a question that I would ask is, what do you think is the most important skill to have to become a leader and like succeed nowadays in the marketplace?
Sebastian, you take that one, man. Maria and I took the other one.
Well, I'll tell you something. You guys are really lucky, because I'll try to connect it with the leadership point that Don and Maria have discussed so well. Something that I used to think about, people that are very knowledgeable in their fields is that, it just gets so complex that I will not understand them. And it's actually quite the opposite. The more someone is good at what they're doing, the more ease they find at explaining what it is that they do, right? And so, for example, take economics and take a difficult subject in economics. You download a paper from the top ranking journal, and you try to understand it, and maybe it's beyond you because maybe you don't have the basis for that. But then you go on YouTube, right? And this might have been written by a Nobel laureate, and you hear that person present their work, and all of a sudden it makes sense, right? Because this person dominates that problem so well and has thought about it so much that is able to explain it to you really well. And that's what I found about leaders, is that if you want to learn something from someone, don't be afraid to ask someone that's really good at that something to explain it to you, just because you think you won't understand because they're like so much better and so ahead of you. In fact, quite the opposite. Sometimes if you ask someone that's your level, you will not understand it because that person doesn't really understand it either, right? So I think I'll go back to where I started, coaching. Don't, like, the limitations are put, like, you put your own limitations, right? And if you think you're not worthy of a better coach, that's on you. It's not because that's how it has to be, right? So just thinking about that is what makes you not worthy of a good coach. But the good thing is that you can immediately stop thinking about that, and all of a sudden the world is open, and you can approach anyone, right? And so there are millions of people that are doing great, and be there and try to approach them, and don't be intimidated.
Great points.
Yep, so we have a little list going now. I'll do it on the order that it appears in my screen. Gayatri, why don't you go?
Thank you so much. I would just like to ask all three panelists of some project that they worked on that they're so proud of, if you would like to share the story.
Yeah, I'll just do one real quick, and that is when we decided to launch a luxury car division, Genesis. Basically we were told just to get the cars out as quick as we could. But our organization decided we wanted to do something different. We wanted to sell direct so that you could buy it completely online. Now, this is 4 years ago. This isn't pandemic type of stuff where, yeah, we got to do it online. This is 4 years ago. No major automobile manufacturer has ever sold directly online other than Tesla. And frankly, with a franchise, it's illegal because when you have franchise laws, and there's a lot of issues I won't get into, but you just can't do it. So we decided to sell direct and not go with a franchise. Now understand, we have all these Hyundai dealers and they all want that Genesis franchise. And then we have to go tell our Hyundai dealers, we're not going to franchise, you're not going to get it. And everybody said, well, this is going to be your last hurrah. This will be your last year as being the CEO. This will never work. And it was a big risk. But we knew it was something that we wanted to do. And we knew that if we could sell direct online, that customers are going to gravitate in this Amazon world that, this is the way cars are going to be sold in the future. So let's lead as opposed to follow. And it's been a tremendous success, and it's been recognized as the top performing launch of a new brand in the world for Hyundai. So it's been great. Scotia is one of our greatest partners in this respect. So I've worked closely with Brian Porter and the entire group at Scotia, who helped us get this brand off and running. And so it's kind of good. I'm here with some colleagues, but it was bringing out a new brand in a different way and watching it succeed, even though everybody said it was going to fail.
Maria?
My career has been one of change. Like most of the jobs that I was put in charge of was to lead a change. And in fact, probably the last 15 years, that's what I've been doing, running transformation projects for the bank. So, I always get a kick out of it, mainly because it involves working with people, building a vision, making the change, and then at the end of it, seeing the fruits of your labor. But I would have to say that one of the biggest transformation initiatives I did was when I ran the retail network. We underwent a retail transformation back to kind of the world is changing, the whole place is digitizing, and we needed to modernize the branches. And it sounds like it's an easy process, right? Well, just fix your technology and that's all you need to do. But actually, it required not only the physical aspects of building new software, bringing in new technology, it was redesigning every branch, retraining every individual, changing the way they looked, changing the way their role was, changing the way they dealt with customers. And when you're dealing with 12,000 people, that is not easy. Change is not about the new thing that you introduce. It's how the people actually use the new thing, right? So, and the most rewarding part of that job was actually me traveling coast to coast and visiting each branch. And I couldn't get to each branch, just to be clear. I could do, because there's not 1,000 of them, but I would go to every district and do 2 or 3 or 4 branches and meet the individuals and talk to them about the process and understand the things that were hard and the things that were going well. And then 6 months later, going back out, because the first visit was all about the things that were difficult. And then 6 months later and 8 months later, it was about, oh, wow, it did work out to be better. It is more positive, and you feel the rewarding aspect of this change that you put through, and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the process, and the fear that perhaps it could fail, and it's all these people that are impacted, and then they come out of it and say, you know what, thank God we did that, because we're so much better served to deal with the current situation and what we need to do. So, the reality is, the thing that's rewarding about the project for me is actually the people and the impact it has on them. whether it's your customers or your employees, that really has that creates that rewarding implication for me. Yeah.
Sebastian, have you worked on any projects or?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, there was this one experience that, really taught me that sometimes, we are so impressed by someone, but we don't realize how many people are actually involved. Like, for example, you watch some of these, shows at night, like, Stephen Colbert or like Jimmy Fallon, and they say amazing jokes every 10 seconds, and you're like, these guys must be geniuses, and you don't realize like how many writers they have making sure that they appear to be these superhuman very funny people, right? And like for me it was the same back when I was at the International Monetary Fund. If every quarter there are big meetings where it used to be the case that the top finance ministers, central bankers would all fly to Washington DC, and they would have the spring meetings, the annual meetings, and they would basically meet in committees, and the top representatives in the international organizations would present their research and then would discuss the policies that they would think are more adequate. But the thing is, to make an impact, you need to make sure that those 15 minutes really count, right? So, you work with your division chief or like the director of the department, and this person sometimes has to address, 20 heads of state, and needs to make them rethink how they're running their countries, right? And just, being there, preparing the briefings, being there, you need to anticipate questions. It's almost like playing chess, right? Like you need to know, okay, like the president is very smart and he's gonna say like, but like that's not gonna work because of this. And then you need to know, well, we thought about it and this is how you address that, right? So, I was involved in these projects where you would spend 3 months really thinking about everything that can be wrong with an argument, so that we would be prepared, so that when my boss or like her boss would have to talk to the president or the finance ministers, we would actually make them think, and just sitting there in the meetings, at the back of the board, and just seeing my boss do such a good job, I'm feeling very proud that we were able to do that. And afterwards, hearing the acknowledgement from these very important people from other countries saying, you guys were very persuasive and very well prepared, and thank you so much. I think that was just something that stayed with me, and that's one of the motivations why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Okay, perfect. I think Rubab Nadeem, you had your hands up.
Yep, I did. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So, Don, you actually spoke about continuing education and investing in yourself. But the biggest trend my peers and I have picked up from our networking experience is that grad school is a bit of a dying trend. And this obviously depends on your industry and occupation goals. But if you look at your own company, do you believe that new graduates with more industry experience are fitting better, or are new graduates more continued education are fitting better?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think education, degrees aren't what's important. It's the ability to continue to expand yourself and grow as a person. And I think, what an education shows you when you get a graduate degree or a doctorate or just a certificate and you continue that education, it says you are confident in yourself, that you are going to improve yourself and that you are capable of expanding your knowledge base. And therefore, I disagree that it's looked at as not important. What's not important is maybe the fact that people get obsessed with MBAs or with the degree itself. I seldom look at that. I just look at how, when I look at a resume, I do go to the educational section because I want to see what you've done to improve yourself. And I'm just as interested in people that had multiple degrees and bachelor levels, or decided that they were going to get a certificate in a particular area after school. And what that shows me is just a drive, a desire to constantly improve. And that's the kind of people you want to employ. So, but I mean, if you've got an MBA from Harvard, I'm going to tell you, you're going to make a bigger impression than if you have an undergrad degree only from Cal State. And those are the facts. And anybody's going to see that and realize that, I mean, connections and drive are also very important in securing those jobs. But once you're in there, I'll be honest, I don't have any executives that do not have MBAs. But it wasn't the fact that they had MBAs as much as it was that they felt the need to keep on expanding. And what I do now is we have a very big compensation plan for people that want to continue education. So we pay for most of it. So any employee, if you don't have a bachelor's, we pick up most of the fee. If you have a bachelor's, you want to get a master's, we pick up most of the fee. If you have a master's, want to get a doctorate, you want to get a certificate, you can apply for the funds and we'll cover it. And it doesn't matter, again, whether it's MBA in business, it may be in psychology, it may be in something that you really wanted to learn more about. So yeah, education matters. And the more the better. I don't think you should ever stop, no matter what your age is. I'll be applying for my doctorate coming up in 2022. I don't want to do it like you're having to do right now. I'll wait till the pandemic's over, but because I really enjoy, being in lecture and listening to people and still learning. And someone might say, well, why would you do that? You're kind of, you've achieved what you wanted to achieve in business. But I haven't stopped learning, and I'm not going to stop learning. It has nothing to do with, getting a promotion or getting a better job. It has to do with just constantly learning while I'm alive on this earth. And hopefully you'll apply that same things in your life, because you'll find it extremely rewarding to continue to expand and learn.
Anything from the other panelists, or?
I don't disagree with what Don said per se, but in an organization like us, I would say that I can definitely say that not all our executives have an MBA. I can also say there are actually some executives that perhaps didn't even have an undergrad until perhaps later in their life. So I would say that when we are interviewing new grads, it's not so much about the letters after your name. So I have a lot of people that apply and they've got an undergrad and a postgrad and a designation, but they're unable to articulate and communicate. They haven't really shown any experience around working with others or collaborating, are not able to in simple terms talk about the expertise they have. That person is not going to really be successful, no matter how great the technical expertise. So I think that the trend you're talking about is not so much that people don't value that postgrad, because they do. But the fact that you have it doesn't automatically make you a better candidate. And that's what you need to understand, is that you have you could have multiple degrees and multiple layers of these degrees and still not be a leader in the future. And it has nothing to do with your that education per se. It has everything to do with how you show up as an individual with your skills and your experiences and your overall abilities. So I always say that you gain lots from doing a postgrad, and especially with the MBAs, because you're really working in a group, as Don had said before, and you're learning from other people's experience. But in some cases, you know what? If you've got a designation, maybe early in your career, go with it that way, and then try for an executive MBA later in life, where your experiences can really be brought forward and contribute to the group discussion. So don't do, like I talked to someone from my team just the other day. He decided he wants to do an executive MBA, and I said, well, why do you want to do this? Because if it is for your own personal growth and development, absolutely supportive of doing that. But what is your expectation from it? Like, if you expect that just because you've done that MBA, you now are entitled to be the next vice president or the next big job, or you need to get an increase, that is not the case, right? All of those things are earned through real experiences and brought to the job. And there are some internship programs and associate programs that require MBAs, but more and more we're starting to not do that, just because of people's backgrounds and where they're coming from. So that would be my only caution, because I agree with Don. This is about lifelong learning, and that should be the expectation, but it doesn't guarantee you a leadership job. It's another tool in your arsenal that helps you build the experiences you need to become one.
Yep, Sebastian, do you have anything to add, or?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say on that, it really depends on you. Like I'm a strong believer that people are born with different qualities, and some people learn best in a classroom. Some people learn best by themselves, just finding their own materials. Some people like a mix. So you really need to ask the question, like, who are you? Like, how you prefer learning, and make sure you make the most out of it. Like, for example, I'm someone that really enjoys picking up university level material and teaching myself about subjects that I didn't get a chance to take when I was in college. I really enjoy that, but I do miss having the chance to raise my hand and ask a question to the professor, right? And I don't get that. And I could, but it's more difficult. And especially when you're starting your career, like, professors can really, like, if you're a good student, right, like they can recommend you, and they can help you accelerate building that network that's going to help you get to where you want to be. So that's an advantage, right? But I also recognize that's not for everyone, and I don't think necessarily it's the way to go, but it might work for you. So I really think that's something that you need to know about yourself. Like, if you're gonna go to university and you're not gonna like it, like, for graduate school, and you're not gonna raise your hand, you're not gonna make the most out of it, maybe it's not for you, right? But if you think you're gonna enjoy it, then go for it. I think people should do things they enjoy, and if you enjoy learning in a structured manner that pushes you to keep the pace, and you think it's a good investment that's gonna pay for itself, then, like, absolutely, I completely encourage it.
One
Thank
thing
you
to
for that.
think about, if I can just add,
Yep.
imagine two people with exactly the same skill set, same background, same everything. And one has extensive education and one doesn't. In a corporate environment, that is the one with more education will often have an advantage. So there is also, I mean, again, there's the personal side of expanding, which is what I believe in. But at the same time, realize that you're in a competitive environment out there. And unless you're going to be an entrepreneur and go out on your own, if you're going to work in an environment with a lot of other people, and there's only, as you go up, it gets more narrow and more narrow. It can't hurt. It can't hurt. Just think about that. And everything that Maria and Sebastian said is absolutely true, that there's a lot more to it than that MBA. But eventually, as you start getting up there, everybody's skill set starts getting pretty close. You're all good at public speaking. You're all good at writing. You're all good at math. You're all good at being able to work, problem solve. But the person that put in that does have the pedigree of the degrees sometimes will stand out more. So I'm just trying to give you every opportunity to think about how you can continue to stand out from the others that you're going to be working with. And we talked about improving in terms of your ability to speak, in terms of your ability to write, in terms of your ability to communicate, all the things that Maria and Sebastian have talked about, which are absolutely critical. But I'm just also a big believer in education, because I just don't think it can ever go wrong. You're investing in yourself, and I think that's the best investment you'll ever make in your life.
Yep. And then apologies, a little over time, but we have time for one more question. Kirshen.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. So my question is, okay, so all of us students, most of us face failures in our journey. We do face hardships, we fall down sometimes, and we find it tougher to actually get back up and continue working towards our dream, our goal. Have any of y'all faced any such failures in life, and like, how have y'all got over them? And do y'all have any advice to give our students regarding that?
I can tell you, I had to take a position in Saudi Arabia. And so in Saudi Arabia, I am a minority. I am an outsider. I'm not accepted. And yet I was the senior managing director of the this is competitive automotive company, will remain nameless, but great company nonetheless. But I was the C-suite executive in Saudi Arabia. And I think most of the people there resented me being there. And so really at that point, the degrees and the speaking ability or the writing ability of the community, and none of that mattered. None of that mattered. All that mattered was humanity and being able to connect with people and understand their culture and accept that you are in probably the most, and this was when there was a king of Saudi Arabia, which it's different today, maybe not totally different, but they're trying to change, but it was a rough environment for a liberal like me to be in a conservative, ultra conservative area like that. And I worked there for 2 years. My family stayed in Canada. I was by myself. I had to commute back and forth to see my family. So it was probably the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. But it was a sacrifice I had to make in order to continue to progress in my career, and especially to understand that the world's changing and that we are going to have a lot of I'm going to be dealing with a lot of different challenges. And if I can overcome this challenge, and if I can work effectively in that environment, I can work in any environment. And I think the same's for all of you. You're going to face hardships, adversity, and difficult times. Work through it. Don't give up. Don't raise a white flag. And then if you do have to give up, don't be hard on yourself. Just pick up the pieces and try somewhere else. There's always a second and third and fourth chance. But for me, it worked out. And so things started to really click. And I started actually enjoying it quite a bit. And now I have a lot of friends who have a completely different viewpoint of life and have helped me grow as an individual. That helps me manage the group I have today, the company I have today. So lessons learned. And hardship will often give you those lessons that you'll be able to learn and apply in your life to help your career, help your personal life, and just help you in this short time that we're on Earth.
Panelists have any other things to add?
I would say, I think there's two things. First, on failure, I think there should be no one who's successful who's never had a failure. And in fact, it's the failure that creates learnings, which brings future success. So I think the first time you fail, perhaps you need to deal with the ego impacts of a failure and the reflection points, but mostly your failures are just a stepping stone to future successes. And it's very important that you look at it that way. Just because you fail at something doesn't mean you are a failure. And distinguishing between the two is hugely important. So I think projects go wrong, things don't quite work out like they planned, mistakes happen, but pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and just keep on going. But make sure you learn from them, because it's a wasted failure if you haven't learned from it. On the adversity side, I would say it's a big bad world, and there's people with different views and different perspectives. I've been a woman in a mainly male-dominated industry for most of my career. There's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of pressure. There's barriers that you're not even aware of, and whether you're a woman or a minority or an underrepresented individual, you will find those type of things. The most important thing I would say for you in those circumstances, and this is what really helped me, is I continue to be my authentic self, despite what others may say, making sure that you keep your voice and you have a voice at the table, which is really Don's point about communication, right? Like if you're there, you have a voice, you're entitled to be there, make sure your voice is heard. And then if you actually downgrade yourself, then others will too. But so believe in yourself in that process. And you can't always change a system. I've always said to myself, in any environment that you're in, you do the best that you can to change that environment if things are not great. But if that environment can't change, then go change your environment, because there's a lot of great places in Canada, in corporate Canada, where you don't have to have that adversity have to deal with that. So I would say to you, be persistent, know yourself, and have the confidence. But most importantly, have a voice and make sure your voice is heard.
Sebastian, anything else to add? Or?
Yeah, what I would say, maybe this is a little bit, I think outside the traditional sense of the mistake. I think the worst mistakes are the ones that you don't even think were mistakes until way after, right? Like one mistake that a lot of people do is they don't really take care of themselves. You know, they really take a huge toll on their body, on their emotions, because they're trying to accomplish a goal. But oftentimes, you being at your best is your most valuable asset, right? And so just don't make that mistake. You won't realize it was a mistake until way later, and at that point you won't be able to do anything about it. And you know, sometimes short-term gains don't really justify it, right? So really think about, you know, you're here for, you know, the long term. It's not about the small victory, but it's about like what you do with your life as a whole, right?
Yep, I completely agree. Thank you guys so much for coming out and for sharing your decades and decades. I'm going to leave it just 2 decades for now of experience. And I would like to thank all of our students for coming out. I would like to specifically thank Kershid. She's the associate I told you guys about in the beginning who pitched this idea. And I'd like to thank her for reaching out to everyone and for bringing this all off the ground. Special thanks to the Department of Economics. Some of our administrators are in the audience. So again, for all the students who registered, 2 of you will be chosen at random to get a $25 Amazon gift card. Don't worry, speakers, we got a little goodie for you. It'll be in your mailbox within the next few days. Yep, so everyone's saying thank you in the chat. If you guys have to go, feel free. Panelists, you are more than welcome to go. If you'd like to stay back for networking, feel free. But I just want to hope everyone is staying healthy and hydrated. I hope you guys are all taking care of your mental health. It's a very tough time.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate it. Kershid, thank you very much as well.
Thank you very much for including us, and good work on this. This is a great way for you guys to have insights into what you want to do past school. So stay well, everybody, and we will meet again, I'm sure. Maybe when I'm interviewing one of you one of these days.
Exactly.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Enroll in our quiz competition, ask questions, public speaking, do all of that. Yep. Woohoo. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, UEC team, please stand, please stay in the call. Thank you. Woohoo. All right, UEC debrief. Everyone here is Faham.
I think we still have a few people who are not from UEC.
Oh, hello. If you're not from UEC, please leave. Yay, thank you. Okay, that's